Imagine sending your child out the door, watching them walk down the driveway, waving goodbye, and believing with every fiber of your being that they are safe in the world. Imagine trusting their friends, trusting the environment, trusting that they will be back home by dinner time, and then imagine receiving a phone call that shatters your entire universe into a million irreparable pieces. Imagine being told by local authorities, the very people sworn to protect and serve, that it was all just a tragic accident, a cruel twist of fate, a bad decision by a young person. But as the days bleed into weeks and the weeks bleed into months, you start looking closer at the details, and nothing, absolutely nothing, adds up. The timeline shifts, the friends change their stories. Forensic evidence quietly disappears into thin air, and a chilling, horrifying, systemic pattern begins to emerge from the shadows. Welcome back. Today, we are wading into waters so dark, so unsettling, and so deeply disturbing that it forces us to ask a terrifying, bone-chilling question. How many times can a local law enforcement system call a suspicious death an accident before the truth finally breaks through the surface? In the span of just a few months in the year 2026, 3 bright, vibrant, 18-year-old young men lost their lives under deeply questionable, highly suspicious, and utterly heartbreaking circumstances. Their names are Nolan Xavier Wells, Daniel Erving, and Tyler Smith. 3 different states, 3 different locations, 3 different sets of friends. But when you examine the fine print, when you look past the official press releases and dive into the raw, bleeding facts, the similarities are so eerie, so glaring, and so sickeningly consistent, it will send a cold shiver straight down your spine. And standing shoulder to shoulder with their grieving, heartbroken families is renowned civil rights attorney Ben Crump, demanding answers, demanding accountability, and refusing to let local law enforcement sweep these tragedies under the rug. But before we plunge into the horrifying depths of what happened to Nolan, Daniel, and Tyler, I want you to ask yourself a very serious question. If your child went out for a fun holiday celebration or a simple weekend fishing trip and never came back alive, what would you do if the police tried to close the investigation in less than 48 hours? Would you quietly accept their comforting story? Or would you fight like hell against a corrupt, closed system to expose the dark reality hiding beneath the surface? Let's turn back the clock. July 4th, 2026. Independence Day across America. A day of bright fireworks, neighborhood barbecues, celebration, and gathering with the people you trust most. For 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells, it was supposed to be an unforgettable, joyful day out on the open water. Nolan and a group of his high school friends, mostly white peers, traveled by boat out to Horn Island. If you've never heard of it, you need to understand what Horn Island actually is. It is a completely uninhabited, isolated, wild barrier island sitting off the coast of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It is remote, rugged, and profoundly unforgiving. There are no stores, no easy communication lines, and no safety nets. Picture the scene as the day wears on. The sun begins to sink below the horizon, painting the sky in deep, bruised shades of purple and orange. The temperature drops, the wind picks up, and the boat is getting ready to make the perilous, choppy journey back to the mainland. But when that boat finally docks on the shore, and the teenagers step off onto solid ground, Nolan Xavier Wells is not among them. Now, pause right there. Let that shock sink deep into your core for a moment. How on earth do you go to a remote, isolated island with a group of people and leave without one of your best friends? How do you drive away, cross miles of dark open water, and only realize or claim to realize that someone is missing after you've already docked, tied off the boat, and left the marina? The excuse given by the individuals on that boat: witnesses nonchalantly told law enforcement that Nolan simply wasn't on the boat when it left the island. Just like that, no panic on the open water, no frantic search parties launched in the middle of the night, no immediate, desperate distress call placed from the middle of the ocean, just an empty seat and a deafening, terrifying silence. For 2 agonizing, sleepless days, Nolan's family lived in a waking nightmare, praying for a miracle. But miracles are hard to come by when the truth is being actively buried. 2 days after he vanished into the dark, a park ranger finally discovered Nolan's lifeless, floating body in the water off the island. And this is where the mystery takes its first dark, infuriating turn. Instantly, almost insultingly fast, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office stepped forward and publicly declared that they did not suspect foul play. Case closed, right? Move along, nothing to see here, just a tragic teenage accident. Except Nolan's family refused to swallow that convenient, lazy pill. They knew their son. They knew something was profoundly wrong. So, they took matters into their own hands and commissioned an independent autopsy. And the preliminary findings completely shattered the official police narrative, the manner and cause of death. Listed strictly and unequivocally as undetermined, the independent medical examiner made it explicitly, undeniably clear more investigation was desperately, urgently needed to rule out foul play or a violent altercation before entering the water. Think about that for a second. The local police rushed to call it a non-suspicious, run-of-the-mill drowning, while an independent medical evaluation couldn't even confirm how he died, let alone why. But it gets infinitely worse. Shocking new evidence has recently surfaced that turns this case completely on its head, including an authenticated audio recording of a distress call from a boat taking on water in that exact geographical area around the exact time Nolan vanished. Nolan's family is now pouring their life savings and resources into hiring a professional audio engineer to analyze that emergency dispatch call, alongside an oceanic expert to study the erratic, dangerous tides of the Gulf. Why wasn't this investigated properly from day one? What were those witnesses hiding when they looked police officers in the eye? The curiosity and the absolute fury is palpable. But hold on, do not go anywhere, because Nolan's terrifying tragedy is only the tip of a massive, submerged iceberg. What if I told you that months earlier, a chillingly similar nightmare unfolded hundreds of miles away in the state of Texas? Let's travel back in time to April 2026. Picture Lake Ray Hubbard, located just outside the bustling sprawl of Dallas, Texas. It is a vast, dark, ominous expanse of water, notorious for its hidden underwater hazards, sudden drop-offs, and an eerie, suffocating nighttime atmosphere. 18-year-old Daniel Erving went out to this very lake with 2 white teenage friends. His loving mother thought it was a peaceful, innocent fishing trip, just teenagers enjoying the outdoors on a quiet evening. Midnight rolls around. The clock ticks past 1 in the morning. Daniel hasn't come home, panic cold. Suffocating panic grips his mother's heart. She immediately reports him missing to local authorities. And when the authorities finally look into it, what story do they spin? What do they claim happened? They state with absolute confidence that Daniel had jumped from a high railway bridge straight into the dark. Treacherous water with his friends, just a reckless kid doing something foolish, right? Days later, rescue teams pulled Daniel's waterlogged body from the dark depths of Lake Ray Hubbard. And right on cue, like clockwork, the state autopsy issues its swift, dismissive verdict: accidental drowning, case closed. Stop right there. Let's analyze the raw facts. Because this is where the shock turns into pure, unadulterated, blinding anger. Daniel Erving was not just any teenager. He was healthy, vibrant, athletic, and a proud, competitive member of his high school swim team. A trained, conditioned swimmer doesn't simply drown in a standard scenario without a massive, desperate fight for survival, and more importantly, the state autopsy revealed something staggering. Something that should have blown the investigation wide open on day 1. Daniel had an unobstructed airway. Read that again for anyone who knows anything about drowning forensics and pathology. An unobstructed airway is a massive, blaring red flag. It completely contradicts the textbook physical signs of a traditional accidental drowning where water fills the lungs and blocks the respiratory tract. Yet, the authorities wanted the public to close the book and walk away. They wanted his mother to mourn in quiet submission and accept their official, convenient lie. But mothers fighting for the truth about their children are an unstoppable force of nature. Daniel's mother refused to back down an inch.
He saw us.
And months later, the truth clawed its way out of the dark shadows with terrifying, undeniable force. The two friends Daniel was with on that fateful dark night, they weren't innocent grieving bystanders mourning their lost buddy. They were hunted down by investigators, and handcuffs clicked loudly around their wrists. They were officially charged with felony evidence tampering. Let that sink deep into your mind. Let that shock rattle the very core of your beliefs. If Daniel's death was truly a tragic, innocent accident, why in the world did his friends need to tamper with physical evidence? According to Dallas police spokespeople, these two individuals completely failed to report the incident when it actually happened. Instead, they panicked not because their friend was dead in the water, but because of what they had done and what the evidence would show. They allegedly threw away Daniel's clothes in secret, discarded his personal phone, and actively scrubbed, deleted, and wiped clean all digital messages and communications. They systematically coldly erased his existence from their digital and physical lives the exact moment he died. If you have nothing to hide, you don't throw away a dead man's phone, you don't burn his clothes in the dead of night. Daniel's mother and her powerhouse legal team are now fighting tooth and nail, demanding that those tampering charges be immediately upgraded to murder, and pushing for a brand new grand jury presentation to tear down the closed, rotting doors of this corrupted local investigation. Are you starting to see the terrifying, undeniable pattern yet? Let's recap the nightmare so far. Nolan Wells, left behind on an uninhabited island by his friends. Local police claim no foul play. Independent autopsy says undetermined. And hidden emergency distress calls surface. Daniel Erving goes out to a dark lake with friends. Authorities claim an accidental bridge jump. The autopsy reveals an impossible unobstructed airway. And months later, his friends are arrested for throwing away his phone and scrubbing his clothes. It's enough to make you question every single headline, every single police statement, and every authority figure you encounter. But believe it or not, we are still not done yet. Hold on to your seats, tighten your grip. Because on July 4th, 2026, the exact same day Nolan Wells was mysteriously vanishing off the humid coast of Mississippi, another 18-year-old boy was drawing his absolute last breath in a suburban living room in Lexington, Kentucky. His name was Tyler Smith, a brand new high school graduate standing proudly on the threshold of adulthood, with his whole life, his dreams, and his future stretching out before him. Where was he at the time? He was attending a house party surrounded by peers. And how did he allegedly die? From a single catastrophic, fatal gunshot wound straight to the head. Now, listen extremely closely to how the local police handled this horrific scene. The narrative was handed to the public with lightning-fast speed, wrapped up in a neat little bow of absolute tragedy and reckless youth behavior. The police ruled Tyler's death accidental and self-inflicted. Their entire investigative case relied entirely, 100%, on the convenient word of party attendees who conveniently claimed that Tyler had shot himself while playing a casual, deadly game of Russian roulette, just like that. A young man dead at a party. And the police take the word of a room full of panicked teenagers at face value without a single shred of deep skepticism. Case closed. Right? Move on wrong. Tyler's family took one look at the sloppy police report and saw a gaping, glaring loophole that exposed either gross, unbelievable incompetence or something far more sinister and calculated. Police never even tested Tyler's hands for gunshot residue. Read that sentence again and let it make your blood boil. A young man dies from a gunshot wound to the head at a crowded house party, officially ruled as a self-inflicted Russian roulette accident, and the authorities didn't even bother to perform a standard, basic gunshot residue test to verify if his hands had actually fired the weapon. How do you miss a step that fundamental? How do you write off a young boy's life without checking the most basic, elementary piece of physical forensic science available to modern law enforcement? And just like in Daniel Erving's case in Texas, The tidy house party narrative began to crumble instantly under the crushing weight of its own blatant lies, days after Tyler's death. The house of cards collapsed completely when a 20-year-old attendee from that very same party was arrested and slapped with heavy criminal charges for tampering with physical evidence. An accidental, self-inflicted gunshot wound does not require anyone to sneak around tampering with evidence. Think about that logic. If Tyler pulled the trigger himself in a tragic accident or a game, why is someone actively tampering with the crime scene? Why is evidence being hidden, moved, or destroyed in the dark? The math does not add up. The official narrative is rotting from the inside out. Nolan Wells, Daniel Erving, Tyler Smith, 3 young black teenagers, 3 bright futures extinguished in the absolute prime of their lives, 3 official police reports trying desperately, hurriedly, to slap the label of accident on their violent deaths, and 3 explosive investigations blown wide open by independent autopsies, hidden audio files, frantic mothers, and actual criminal charges for evidence tampering. What are the mathematical odds? What are the statistical chances that 3 separate 18-year-olds, living in different parts of the country, all surrounded by mostly white peers, would all die under bizarre, unexplained circumstances, have their deaths instantly minimized by local law enforcement as simple accidents, and then have the people surrounding them caught red-handed hiding, destroying, and tampering with evidence? It is not a coincidence. A mathematical coincidence happens once in a blue moon, twice is deeply suspicious. But 3 times? 3 times is a terrifying, undeniable, systemic pattern. When local authorities rush to close a case file in record time, it's usually because they don't want anyone looking too closely at what's written on the pages inside. They don't want you asking why Nolan was abandoned on a deserted island. They don't want you asking why Daniel's phone was thrown into a hidden dumpster. They don't want you asking why Tyler's hands were never tested for gunpowder residue. They want us to forget. They want these boys to become just another forgotten statistic, swept neatly under the rug of a legal system that too often protects a comfortable, lazy narrative over the hard, bleeding, uncomfortable truth. But the families of Nolan and Daniel and Tyler refuse to let them be forgotten in the dark. Backed by civil rights attorney Ben Crump, they are waging a relentless, unyielding war for accountability. They are standing up courageously against the locked doors, the lazy police work, and the sickening cover-ups. They are demanding a full re-examination of the physical evidence, new grand jury presentations, and true, uncompromised justice. Because every single one of us, no matter who we are, where we live, or what color our skin happens to be, deserves to know that if tragedy strikes, the people sworn to protect and serve will actually look for the honest truth. Instead of actively helping to hide it, the questions are out there in the open. The evidence tampering has been legally proven in court. The inconsistencies are screaming for your attention. Now, the rest of the responsibility is up to us. We have to keep the intense spotlight shining directly on these cases. We have to keep asking the hard questions. We have to make sure that the names Nolan Xavier Wells, Daniel Erving, and Tyler Smith are never swept away by the current of time. Share this story with everyone you know. Talk about it in the comments. Demand absolute transparency from local authorities. Because justice delayed is justice denied, and these families have already waited far too long in the agonizing dark. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant, and never, ever stop seeking the true, unvarnished story.